Okay, we're live. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the final board meeting of 2021. Before we begin, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge the hurt and the pain that I know many in our community are feeling with the passing of Caden Spork. I know his family, Crystal, Doug, Aria, the Métis community are in mourning right now, and so is Reynolds. It is a challenging time for them and the whole school community. And I want to offer my condolences on behalf of the board to them and the whole Reynolds community as they move forward together to try to heal. We're going to acknowledge the traditional territories. The Greater Victoria School District wishes to recognize and acknowledge the Esquimalt and Songhees nations on whose traditional territories we do live, learn, and do our work. And I am very grateful to see Chief Rob Thomas here with us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. We are very honored to have you here. I will move to an approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve? Moved by Tom, seconded by Anne. We do have a quick addendum or amendment to the agenda tonight, and that will be to remove E2 DII and postpone it until January, where the parties will have an opportunity to discuss going forward the proposal at E2 DII. And so that is the Lansdowne Middle School Partial Disposal Bylaw 2020 first and second reading will be moved to January. And I do believe that is, we'll also have public disclosure of in-camera items. We'll add to G2 a motion moved in camera on the vaccine mandate from the Board of Education as well. And unless I am mistaken, staff will surely tell me if I've missed anything. I don't believe I have. If that is all, we will have, Jordan, please go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. I'd like to add a letter under correspondence, just in the spirit of including the advocacy letters that flow to us through the BCSTA. I'm hoping that we can include the November 18th, 2021 letter from the First Nations Leadership Council to Minister Whiteside. It was circulated to trustees on December 9th.
And you want to add that to B5?
Under correspondence, yes, please.
Okay, can do. Nicole.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, I guess, to the rest of the board, there were also a number of pieces of correspondence, mostly I think received via email, but also I think the occasional letter around Lansdowne South and Bowker Creek and the land sale that didn't make it into the agenda under correspondence. I'm just wondering if we could speak to that and just either add those items under correspondence or maybe make a plan to do so at our next board meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Nicole. We can maybe, with the board's indulgence, I do believe Secretary Treasurer Morris was going to address that when we came to that part of the agenda down under the Lansdowne. Are you okay if we postpone that to a discussion when the Secretary Treasurer brings it forward? Would that be amenable?
That sounds good.
Thank you. Any other amendments to the agenda as proposed? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call the question on the agenda. All those in favor? And Trustee Rob Painter, I'm sorry, I don't see your camera. So if you can signify somehow, maybe he has left the building. Okay, he is in favor. Very good. So that is approved. We'll now go to A3, Local Education Agreement, Esquimalt Nation, and I will turn the floor over to Interim Superintendent Deb Whitten.
Great, thank you very much. Good evening, and thank you again, Chair Painter. Last week, I had the opportunity to go into community and sit with Chief Rob Thomas and Kaylee Dyer. It was an important conversation as we talked about the importance of the local education agreement, as it being an essential document that describes the process for building on the relationship between the Esquimalt Nation, the board, and the district to deliver quality programs and services to improve the outcomes for Esquimalt Nation students. This LEA has been a long time in coming. It's very exciting as it confirms a mutual commitment and shared accountability. I'd like to recognize with appreciation the writing team that came together to co-design the agreement. Many hours were spent by many individuals conversing, collaborating, and co-creating while keeping the students and families in the center of the agreement. I'm looking forward to the important work ahead as outlined in the LEA's strategic priorities and objectives, responsibilities, and commitments. And at this time, I would like to once again welcome Chief Rob Thomas and invite him to share some words.
Thank you, Deb. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Deb Whitten, Chair Ryan Painter, and Vice Chair Tom Ferris on you guys' new roles. I'm excited, like I said, about a new fresh start for Esquimalt Nation. Ryan, I know we didn't get off on the right start at first. I appreciate everything that you've said in your apology. You're bettering yourself, you're learning, and this is all a huge learning curve for all of us. And I appreciate your commitment, and I wish you the best of luck as chair. I know you can do it, and yeah. So with that said, I would also like to thank everybody involved who was had a helping hand making this LEA possible, especially Kaylee Dyer, Councilman John Thomas, and everybody from SD61 who helped out. This is a huge step forward for my nation. Not just for my nation, but for my children. And I want to see, like you all, I want to see nothing but success for all children. And this tool will definitely help us. It's a long time overdue, and we're finally catching up. So I just like to thank everybody involved. The graduation rates in the school district eyes and in my eyes are two different things. When our children graduate and they get that paper, how much does it mean? When they go try to get into college or university, and then they find out they have to do upgrading, their handwriting, they can't even do cursive writing. They write down their name and their printing is atrocious. I don't call that success. I don't call that a graduation. And that's what this LEA is going to help us do. It's going to actually help our kids graduate and make a brighter future for themselves. So I want to thank everybody involved, and I want to thank the school district for adopting it and putting it into motion. So I raise my hands to all of you. Haichka. And if Kaylee, if you have any words, please.
Sure. Thank you, Chief Thomas. It's certainly been an honor and a privilege to work with Esquimalt Nation's Chief and Council and School District 61 in creating this local education agreement. Extra special acknowledgement to the process to Chief Robert Thomas, Councillor John Thomas, as well as Shelley Nemi, Colin Roberts, and Craig Schellenberg for your guidance and heartfelt collaboration. It's our collective responsibility to ensure that the needs of Indigenous students are not lost within a system that was founded upon colonial values and belief systems. And the creation and implementation of this document is a commitment to listen, to learn, and to support the community in paving a brighter path forward. I'm incredibly honored to be a part of this moment in Esquimalt Nation's history and look forward to the important work to be done alongside all of you. Big thank you. Haichka.
Thank you, Chief Thomas and Kaylee. And I know Deb had some final words to say. So Deb, I'll put it back to you.
Thank you. Thank you again, Chief Rob Thomas and Kaylee. We look forward to continuing to build on this new relationship with you and Chief and Council and the community. We also look forward to a time in the spring that we can celebrate the signing of the LEA in person, in community. So thank you again.
Thank you, everybody. I will not even attempt to speak further because everything that needed to be said was powerfully said already. So thank you very much, Chief Thomas, Kaylee, and everybody involved in this process. So we do have a recommended motion that the Board of Education of School District number 61 Greater Victoria approve the local education agreement with the Esquimalt Nation as presented. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Jordan, seconded by Tom. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor? And that is unanimous. Congratulations, Chief Thomas, Kaylee, Esquimalt Nation. Congratulations. Chief Thomas, I will turn the floor over to you again.
I was just going to say thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to working very closely with this board.
Thank you very much. And thank everybody for this. It's a very exciting day. We'll go to approval of the minutes. Recommended motion that the November 22nd, 2021 regular board minutes be approved. Can I have a motion to approve? Moved by Elaine, seconded by Jordan. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing no discussion. All those in favor? All those opposed? That is unanimous. Very good. Is there any business arising from the minutes of November 22nd? Seeing and hearing none, we'll go down to A8. And with the permission of the board and hopefully unanimous consent, there is a request to switch C and B to have Soren Heinrich speak first, and then Susan Haddon speak second, and then Ian Graham follow. Do I have consent of the board to just shift those around here? Thank you very much. So first, Paul Palin, my apologies if I've gotten that wrong. Board Chair, Victoria Hospice Society, Lansdowne Middle School South Campus. Paul, you have 5 minutes. I will be timing you. When you get down to 1 minute, I'll make sure I'll flail or something. Make sure we're getting down to the end of your time. But Paul, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So my name is Paul Palin, and I'm the current chair of Victoria Hospice. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to be allowed to speak about Victoria Hospice today. I've been the chair of the board of Victoria Hospice since the early 2000s when I first started, and then I took some time off and came back and joined again. Altogether, I've had 9 years on the board, close to four, have been as chair of the board. Each year, I should start off by saying that more than 5,000 individuals and businesses from Greater Victoria generously fund more than half of our annual operating cost of $8 million. So we get $4 million a year from the community every single year. On the call this evening, there may well be many people in the audience today who have been touched by hospice, either through their families, their friends, colleagues who have in some way interacted with hospice and been supported by hospice. We've always been a community-based organization and a volunteer-driven organization committed to enhancing the quality of life for those facing advancing illness, death, and bereavement through skilled, compassionate care, education, research, and advocacy. Without community support and our important partnership with Island Health, we could not fulfill our mission. Victoria Hospice is a fully accredited healthcare organization that currently operates from the Richmond Pavilion at the Royal Jubilee Hospital. For those who don't know, we're one of the very few accredited hospices in Canada and considered one of the leaders. A former maternity ward is what we are currently working in at Jubilee. The building is 70 years old and is no longer ideal for clinical care. This has been accentuated, in fact, by both COVID, but also the heat wave that we had last year. It just showed you how completely inadequate it is to provide care to people who are in their final stages of life. Each year, we provide care to approximately 1,000 individuals on our 18-bed inpatient unit and in the community through our 24-hour palliative response team. We also have a temporary lease for our community support center in Saanich, which offers grief counseling, educational workshops, and more. Now more than ever, we must build an expanded center of excellence to meet the growing needs of our community. By 2035, the population of people over 75 will more than double. And seeking a new facility for Victoria Hospice is a really important part of our strategic framework. I can tell you that from my own personal experience, we started looking for a new facility 15 years ago. And we've only now got to the point where we finally have found something that is suitable and in fact fantastic for what we need. We've researched dozens of possible sites to accommodate the expansion of our care. Renovations are not possible where we are, so finding a suitable site is the only solution. We feel confident and hopeful that the Lansdowne South Campus property with its proximity to the hospital and to Bowker Creek is truly an ideal property. A revitalized creek is an integral part of our vision for a new location for Victoria Hospice. We've familiarized ourselves with the Bowker Creek blueprint, and we commit to investing in the expertise needed to properly assess, revive, and protect the creek. We've already started spending money bringing in experts to give us guidance on that. Collaborating with the community and groups such as the Friends of Bowker Creek is essential to ensure proper stewardship of the watershed. Along with the importance of Bowker Creek to local ecosystems, there's no doubt that this beautiful environment will offer peace and comfort for people at the end of life and for families who are grieving. We have worked hard and negotiated in good faith to secure this important property. By assuring everyone of our commitment to work collaboratively to revive and beautify Bowker Creek, we hope we can count on your timely support to conclude the sale of the property to Victoria Hospice. We think this would be a win for the school district, for Victoria Hospice, and for the Bowker Creek Initiative. Most importantly, it's also helping to meet the future needs of Victoria and the surrounding community.
Paul, you've got 1 minute left.
Okay, over the decades, we have been sustained by an incredible wave of compassion and support for the Greater Victoria, from the Greater Victoria community. And it's with great thanks from them that we are growing our circle of care. Victoria Hospice and Bowker Creek are both essential to the health and well-being of our community, and we look forward to working with School District 61 and the community to protect both of these treasures for years to come. I just wanted to mention at the end, Mr. Chair, that before retiring, I was an assistant deputy minister in education for 6 years. And I just wanted to acknowledge the important work that you and your colleagues do and all the staff do in supporting Victoria and the students of Victoria. So thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Paul, and appreciate your words tonight. We'll now, we will now go to Soren Heinrich, Victoria resident, Lansdowne Middle School South Campus. Soren, you have 5 minutes. We'll let you know at about the 1 minute mark when you are getting close to your time. Soren, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Chair Painter. Before I get started, can I be assured that the slide deck is ready to go at an appropriate time? There's a slide presentation.
Andy, do we have that queued up?
I do not, unfortunately. If let me just check that I've got a copy of the presentation. 1 moment, please.
Not a problem. Soren, this won't cut into your time. Don't worry.
Thanks.
Yes, Chief Thomas.
I'd just like to thank the board. I'm going to be bowing out now, and I thought it'd be disrespectful just to turn off my camera. So I'd like to thank the board for listening to myself and Kaylee Dyer. And I want to wish you all the best on this holiday season. So thank you all.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Kaylee.
Nice.
Okay, as we wait with anticipation the presentation, anyone planning on looking at the meteor shower tonight? If you're waiting until midnight, apparently that's the perfect time. How are we coming with that presentation, Andy? Still anticipating.
Sorry, I don't see a copy of the presentation in my email. Would it be possible to forward that on, or I can give you the ability to share your screen as well.
I think I have it here, Andy, so I'm just going to fire it off to you. I've just got it in my email, so I've just sent it to you.
Thank you. It's it should be 27 slides.
Thank you. One moment, please.
And thank you, everybody, for your patience as we queue up this slide deck.
I'd be happy to use up some airtime right now.
Well, it would cut into your presentation, Soren, so maybe you want to just save that whole 5 minutes. And
all right, I'm going to be.
Are you okay?
fast.
All right, well then let's get you started then, Soren. And when we get that slide deck queued up, Andy can probably just start. So, oh, there we go. It's like he
There we
knew
go.
what we wanted. All right, Soren, the
Okay,
floor is
sorry about
yours.
that.
Yes, all right, I'll start now. I'm a director of the Friends of Bowker Creek Society. I have served as a community representative on the Bowker Creek Initiative Steering Committee since 2006. And I look forward to the Secretary Treasurer's explanation for the missing correspondence when that comes up in the agenda. And tonight we ask that the trustees decline to dispose of this property, or at least defer a decision until broad community consultation takes place to look at all options for this property. And that's a minister's requirement. And so tonight we will share a few points that were presented to some of the trustees and staff on December 8th at the request of the BCI. And we are not speaking tonight on behalf of the BCI, but want to emphasize a few points that were made in the presentation. So I'll present an overview of the creek and the urban watershed. Susan Haddon will talk about the flood risk, and Ian Graham will talk more about the benefits to education. So may we have the next slide, please, Andy? This shows a map of the watershed, and what's highlighted in red is the location of the Lansdowne South campus next to a blue piece of Bowker Creek. That's an open section of the creek, you all know. The dotted lines represent the 2/3 of the creek that is piped underground in the watershed. And so this 60% or 56% impervious surfaces makes for a very flashy creek. The flood levels are very high. The Bowker Creek Initiative represents 20 years of collaborative effort involving multiple agencies, including Saanich, Victoria, Oak Bay, the CRD, the University of Victoria, 6 community associations, and us, the Friends of Bowker Creek Society. May I have the next slide, please? This shows the key properties that SD61 has jurisdiction over in the watershed. The large one you see in the middle is the Lansdowne North Campus, of which a section of it was sold to the French school to build a school. And then just below it is the Lansdowne South Campus that we're discussing tonight. Next slide, please. The wetland of the Shelburne Valley became farmland, and water from fields was diverted into ditches and into culverts in the creek. That blue line represents the current line of the creek, roughly underneath Shelburne Street today. Next slide, please. So this urban development that we have now has caused key issues, flooding. Next slide. Erosion. This large picture shows the erosion that's happened at Richmond School. Next slide, please. Decreased water quality as pollution enters the creek from hard surfaces and running off roads. Next slide, please. Culverting and channelization. Next slide, please. And this shows a comparison between a natural watershed and an urban watershed. And so you can see that large blue arrow that's represents the runoff from impervious surfaces in an urban environment is one of the most significant things that we can see, especially during flood events like we had in mid November. And so some of the excuse me, next slide, please. So through the Bowker Creek Initiative, action was determined that action was needed, and so a series of
Soren, just you're at a minute left. Just letting you know.
Thank you. Almost done. So you can see that there was draft management plans and public consultation, at which point the Bowker Creek Initiative was founded in steering committee was founded in 2004, and on the blue box on the right shows the 4 main goals of the Bowker Creek Blueprint. And next slide, please. And so here we are at a close-up aerial view of Reach 9, showing the creek running straight through the property, dividing off a large section of the property, compromising it. And but the creek is a key form maker in the neighborhood. It's rare to have public ownership of both sides of the creek, but it's channelized, it's eroding, and there are safety issues requiring it to be fenced to protect children and the community from falling in. It's quite steep there, needs work and invasive removal as well. So now I would like to introduce Susan to present the next slide regarding flooding and flood mitigation.
Your timing was impeccable, Soren. Right on.
Thanks,
So
Brian.
next we'll have Susan Haddon. Susan, the floor is yours for 5 minutes. Susan, are you with us?
Sorry, may I start my time now? Chair?
Yes, yeah. I'll start the time for you, and I'll let you know when you've got a minute left. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I thought you were unmuting me. Thank you, Soren, and good evening. My name is Susan Haddon, and I'm speaking to you as a Saanich resident, parent and grandparent with a child in Cedar Hill School. I want to talk about Bowker Creek, Reach 9 of which bisects the Richmond School property and which would be affected by the proposed sale. My focus is on the creek from a climate adaptation perspective. Given projections for and our recent experience of increased extreme weather events, climate change and mitigation are and must be top of mind. The Bowker Creek Watershed Management Plan was completed in 2003. It has 4 goals and 11 objectives, including that watershed management decisions must be based on a comprehensive understanding of the hydrological characteristics of the drainage system or watershed. The 2007 Master Drainage Plan was developed as a result. Could I have the next slide, please? The Master Drainage Plan included modeling that showed the extent of flooding that was projected to occur in the event of 10, 25, 100, or 200-year storm events if nothing was done. Next slide, please. In case it's not easy to see on these maps, the yellow areas indicate the extent of flooding in the event of a 10-year storm. The green areas indicate the extent of flooding in a 25-year event, beige, a 100-year event, and red, a 200-year storm event. As you can see, the lot proposed for sale would be completely submerged, as would many of the surrounding homes and those further downstream in the event of either a 100 or a 200-year storm event, if nothing is done. We need to take mitigation steps to reduce the impact of these flood events by widening and meandering the creek wherever possible and by preserving natural and green space rather than building on it and thus reducing the amount of permeable surface area. Next slide, please. Here you can see the projections for the number of buildings or homes that would be affected, organized by type of storm event and by the impact of any mitigation measure. These mitigation efforts include slowing down stormwater by widening and meandering the creek. These steps have the effect of slowing the creek's velocity, increasing infiltration or detention of the flow, and of reducing erosion and damage to aquatic species and habitats. Next slide, please. These photos show some of the effect of flooding on the property that was caused by the recent extreme weather event in mid-November. Next slide, please. As an endorser of the Bowker Creek Blueprint, you will be familiar with this unique and much lauded version of an integrated stormwater management plan, the Bowker Creek Blueprint. The plan sets out principles and specific actions that balance the social, economic, and environmental aspects of urban watershed renewal. The vision, as embodied in the watershed plan, the blueprint, the master drainage plan, the daylighting study, and all other supporting plan documents, is the result of 20 years of collaborative effort involving multiple agencies and thousands of hours of staff and volunteer time, energy, and effort, and thousands of dollars. The blueprint's objective is to manage the varied human uses and natural areas in the watershed to minimize runoff and pollution and result in Bowker Creek becoming once again a healthy stream that supports habitat for native vegetation and wildlife, and a salmon-bearing stream once again. The Friends of Bowker Creek will be placing chum salmon eggs in the creek at Monteith in late January 2022. The blueprint also envisages a community greenway adjacent to the creek, connecting neighborhoods from its source at the University of Victoria through to its mouth at the Salish Sea.
Susan, you have 1 minute left.
17 reaches of the creek, including piped and open sections, are identified in the blueprint for specific integrated actions such as infiltration, rain gardens, infrastructure improvements, on-site detention, providing more elbow room for streams. Everyone has a responsibility, and many of the mitigation efforts are already underway. Next slide, please. A daylighting feasibility study has been completed that identifies opportunities for closed sections of the creek. 60% is currently culverted. Reach 9 of the creek, bisecting the Richmond property, is one of the longest stretches of unculverted creek, and it means that it provides extraordinary opportunities to mitigate the effects of climate change, to reduce the downstream effects of flooding, to preserve habitat, to contribute to community well-being, to save a green space in an increasingly densified area of the region, to advance the 100-year blueprint, to enable the associated greenway connections, and also to offer unparalleled educational experiences for current and future generations. I urge you to delay your decision on this proposed sale until a more robust engagement process can be undertaken and all options considered. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. We'll now go to our final speaker from BCI, Ian Graham. Ian, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Painter and trustees. Ian Graham speaking as a Saanich resident. I've been involved in this watershed since the mid-90s and helped establish the Bowker Creek Initiative and its precursor almost 20 years ago. I'm recently retired from the public service, and during my career, I was a director in the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy, where I led the province's Watershed Sustainability Unit for about 8 years. Water has a habit of getting into a lot of business areas, and one of my roles is to brief decision makers like you, ministers, deputy ministers, MLAs, local government leaders, briefing them on water and land-related issues, typically involved laying out the problem, the suite of potential options, pros and cons, policy implications, impacts on other interests, and really importantly, costs and risks, especially around public safety. So that they had a clear picture of the issue and available options. And quite honestly, I've followed this process for a long time, and I don't think you currently have a well-rounded package in front of you tonight that supports an informed decision. You've gone straight to a single option, i.e. dispose of 1.9 acres with little consideration of its broader community implications, how it fits into education and public safety at Lansdowne and downstream, and really no consideration of other potential options. And I'll come back to that. Next slide. My second point is about the importance of vision and the blueprint that Soren and Susan mentioned. And I want to take you to Oak Bay High School and remind you of what was accomplished there. Next slide. So the restoration project came about through an enormously successful partnership. The next slide. It brought creativity, expertise, and resources, and some of the partners are shown here. And as an example, the initiative, but the BCI secured almost $750,000 of federal and provincial grants to fund this project on the Oak Bay High site. Next slide. This slide just shows some of the before and after shots. Next slide. Key objectives were outdoor learning and education, safety, habitat, flood management, and reducing long-term maintenance costs. So taking an impoverished system and creating a centerpiece for students and the community, and leading by example. You know, Oak Bay students helped design this project. Next slide. So if you truly buy into this kind of vision, and I think you and most students and parents do, if you buy into this vision, you know, the question is, why would you want to constrain yourselves on the opportunity by arbitrarily subdividing down the center line of the creek at Lansdowne South? If you subdivide and sell that parcel with that, you know, property line down the center, I can almost guarantee that you're going to lose control over what can occur on the east side of your remaining property. The creek is already heavily constrained there. You are just adding another constraint that's going to limit your options. So my pitch to you is consider the benefits of having a real dialogue that explores options and clarifies a vision, then decide if and what portion of the property is surplus to your needs. The way you do that is you continue the dialogue that was started only last week through the meeting with the BCI and its partners. You know, it was a hugely valuable conversation, and I want to compliment the former Chair Whitaker and the Secretary Treasurer for, you know, making that happen. Almost all the key interests were there, except for the teachers, some parents, and First Nations. And I think, you know, to truncate that dialogue through a hasty decision would be a really big mistake. Lastly, I just want to acknowledge Victoria Hospice. You know, they are a wonderful organization and have been an important part of my family. They have pressures and timelines as well, but their urgency should not distract from your role as trustees and your focus on student achievement and well-being and the quality of current and future learning environments. So in closing, I just want to, we go to the next slide, or pardon me, the very last slide. One more. I just want to, in closing, I just want to leave you with this quote from former vice principal at Oak Bay High. You know, one of the real champions at Oak Bay High School. A young person's surroundings are always a silent educator, and the best way to inoculate a sense of environmental responsibility and stewardship in youth is to model it. So in conclusion, I'm again asking you to slow this process down, defer this decision, look at all potential options, and continue the dialogue that we started last Wednesday. Great things will happen. I guarantee it. Thank you.
Thank you, Soren, Susan, and Ian. And just to confirm, in the event that you did miss it, on approval of the agenda at the beginning of this meeting, the first and second reading of the bylaw was postponed to January in order to allow stakeholders an opportunity to discuss next steps. So that has been done, and I anticipate there will be conversations to take place in the very near future. Final speaker is Marianne Watson. Marianne, you have 5 minutes. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Marianne Watson, and this is my husband, Marvin. We would like to thank you for this opportunity to speak. We're, however, disappointed to be here again requesting the SD61 Board of Trustees uphold its obligation to investigate, address, resolve, and remove racism. Racism is systemic in SD61, an ugly truth witnessed by ourselves and others, whether it's acknowledged or not by the majority of the board and senior admin. It was exposed, and requests for an investigation publicly made repeatedly in March, June, and August. The Superintendent's Office's September 9th letter to my family acknowledged the harm to our families resulting from racist postings and apologized for the distress. Notably, no accountability was offered, no resolutions, no reconciliation, saying our complaint was taken seriously and thoughtfully, and that the board and super rendered their decisions. The matter is now considered closed, but nowhere in the letter were the words investigation or accountability or appeal. We assure you the systemic racism and white supremacy impacts our children's learning environment and achievement, leaving victims with life-lasting trauma. It seems the board and super's office are suggesting to the greater Victoria school community the decision regarding systemic racism and discrimination in the district can be made without serious investigation into this public complaint and without appeal. SD61's complaint process provides the process for how a complaint is to be investigated. Why was it not used? The anti-racism word salad solution offered was for the super to create a professional development plan to raise awareness and competency of senior admin and trustees around reconciliation, colonialism, and systemic racism. The letter mentioned they all took a one-day cultural perspectives training session in August. So to be clear, the board and senior admin decided to spend students' education funds on courses for themselves, with even more professional development plans ahead, instead of choosing to order a third-party investigation into systemic racism and the hate and bias incidents during the budget process. Instead of just being anti-racist and respectful of the people who have lived experience or who already have anti-racism training, this board and senior admin chooses to keep insisting they've done no wrong and will not conduct an investigation while claiming that they are educating themselves. No amount of courses are going to qualify this board and admin to speak on or make decisions for minorities. None. You all must get this idea that you can make decisions about minorities without minorities out of your head. It's full-blown bigotry. It seems the complaint process and the appeals process are combined into one for minority complaints. Stepping back as a chair is not a resignation. It's insulting and dismissive of the harm caused to Indigenous and minority students. Taking courses and hiring special advisors, using the kids' education funds when racist conduct by trustees and senior admin happens is a perverse robbery of already marginalized students. This conduct is reminiscent of the March 1st meeting when Patty Backus commented on our current chair's conduct. She described it as, in total, cited the board's bylaws 7 times in a meeting that lasted 27 minutes as if they were some sort of divine direction and not just the board's made-up rules being used as tools of oppression to maintain colonial power and governance structures. So much for situating with an open heart. We were asked by the interim super what our kids thought of SD61's response to systemic racism. Our eldest said all they do is create mechanisms to prevent change.
You have 1 minute. You have 1 minute left. Just letting you know.
Yeah, to prevent changes while having a facsimile of action. The same can be said about procedure. You all have a responsibility to do what's right for the students in your charge and the community at large. In her latest report, BC Rep for Children and Youth, Mary Ellen Tripole-LaPont, points out that Indigenous specific racism and systemic racism exists in the education system. She further states that processes to investigate and examine the root causes and the extent of this racism and how to address it has not yet advanced. We are now calling on SD61's anti-racist trustees, staff, rights holders, stakeholders, and the community at large to lobby Minister Whiteside to request an addressing racism and plain sight investigation into SD61 and BC Ed. Obviously, this board and senior admin are not going to honor SD61's own code of conduct or policies, regulations and bylaws, or the BC Human Rights Code or the Canadian Charter of Rights. As such, they can't be trusted. And addressing racism and plain sight investigation into SD61 and BC Ed is required. Thank you.
You're muted, Chair. Still muted, unfortunately.
Sorry, everyone. Mute mic issues. So there we go. Into correspondence, we have B1 to B5. B5 was added by Trustee Waters, which is the First Nations Leadership Council letter regarding foundation skills assessments, which will be added. Did anyone want to discuss any of the correspondence listed here? Seeing and hearing none, we'll move on to trustee reports. Chair's report is there for your review, as is the annual work plan.
Chair,
Yes.
Trustee Waters had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, and I even have everyone all in line here. Trustee Waters, my apologies for missing you. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. Just because the letter has just been added, I just want to encourage everybody to take time to read it. It is coming from the First Nations Leadership Council, but in partnership with the British Columbia Assembly of First Nations, the First Nations Summit, the Union of British Columbia Indian Chiefs as well. And it is in support of FSAs and talking about the importance of upholding our agreements. It's calling on the Minister of Education to really support implementation of the FSAs, and that has real implications, I think, for us as a school district. I know FSAs are always a hot topic, but I think this provides a really important perspective. So I hope everybody will take the time to have a look at it and consider it as we move forward with our discussions on the topic.
Thank you, Jordan. Really appreciate that. Okay, back to C, trustee reports. The chair's report for your information, as well as the annual work plan. Before we move on to standing committee chair elections, was there any questions on the chair's report or annual work plan? Anne, go ahead.
Thank you. I just noticed in your chair's report or the schedule of your activities, you had a meeting with the GVTA president, and I just wondered what your discussions were about.
It was just a friendly conversation to sit down, discuss our hopes and aspirations over the next year, and our focus on supporting student learning and student achievement in safe environments across the district.
Okay, thank you. And I also note that you did go to the BCSTA training, and I'm going to do this every time you give me a schedule of events. Tell me one thing that you learned at that event.
Sorry, the BCSTA training, are you referring to the
academy?
Oh my gosh, one thing that I learned. I learned an incredible amount. Well, actually, one of the most powerful presentations came from the Superintendent of Indigenous Education, which was certainly they focused a lot on the FSAs, but also on the priority to really work together, row in the same direction is certainly a phrase that was used that stuck into my head. And having an opportunity to hear from them and hear from as well John Chenoweth, who is a fellow trustee, to speak about Indigenous reconciliation in education was also uniquely powerful. It was an important weekend. There's a lot of learning that I could probably go through, but those are the pieces that stick out in my mind most prominently.
So is there something that you learned that you want to share with the rest of us who weren't there? I guess it would be a better way to phrase that question.
Sure. I've shared my piece for now. I'm happy to discuss further at another opportunity, but we have a rather long agenda, so I'm happy to go through that maybe at another time if you'd like.
Excellent. I just hope that the chair's report is not a schedule of activities and has some fulsome substance next time. How's that?
Thank you. I will be happy to continue providing the chair's report. The annual work plan is there as well for review, January 2022. Any discussion on that? Seeing and hearing none, we can go to the standing committee chair elections. So the process for this, chairs will be familiar, is as previous. You will be submitting nominations to via text to Interim Superintendent Whitten and Secretary Treasurer Morris. So first we'll go for the Education Policy and Directions Committee, and I will call for nominations for chair for the Education Policy and Directions Committee. It's a first call for nominations. Second call for nominations for chair of the Education Policy and Directions Committee. And third and final call for nominations for Education Policy and Directions Committee Chair. Okay, I will declare nominations closed. And we'll wait to get a report back from Kim and Deb on who has been nominated, and we'll go to elections if needed. Okay, we have nominations in. We have two nominees. We have trustees Rob Painter and trustees Jordan Waters. So we'll go in reverse order. Trustee Jordan Waters, do you accept your nomination?
With thanks to my nominator, I will decline.
Thank you. And trustee Rob Painter, do you accept your nomination as the only standing nominee left?
I'm afraid we might have to do it again because my interests have always been in operations, and so with thanks, I decline.
Okay, then we will do this again. I will call nominations for Education Policy and Directions Committee. A first call for nominations. Second call for nominations for Education Policy and Directions Committee Chair. And third and final call for nominations for Education Policy and Directions Committee Chair. And I will declare nominations closed, and we'll wait to get a report on the nominees. Still waiting on that report on nominees. I have not come through on my end yet. Okay, we have three nominees. We'll start with Trustee Ann Whitaker. You have been nominated. Do you accept?
With thanks to my nominator, I'm sorry, I am going to decline.
Thank you. We will go to Tom Ferris. Tom, do you accept?
I will accept.
Thank you. And Angie Hensa, you have also been nominated. Do you accept?
With thanks to my nominator, I'm going to have to decline. I've just started a new 9-to-5 job, and adding one more new thing to my family is a bit more than I can take on at this moment. But thank you anyway.
Thank you. Okay, well, with that, we have congratulations to Tom Ferris, our new Education Policy and Directions Committee Chair. Thank you, Tom, for stepping up.
Thank you.
We'll now go to the election of the Operations Policy and Planning Committee Chair. So I will call for nominations for Operations Policy and Planning Committee Chair. I will do a second call for nominations for Operations Planning and Policy, Operations Policy and Planning Committee Chair. And I will do a third and final call for the Operations Policy and Planning Committee Chair for the that committee. And I will declare nominations closed, and we will wait for a report on the nominees. Okay, we have two nominees for Chair of Operations Policy and Planning. First nominee is Rob Painter. Rob, do you accept?
With thanks to my nominator, I do accept.
All right, and then we have Elaine Leonard also nominated. Elaine, do you accept?
Thank you. With thanks to my nominator, yes, I do.
All right, so we're going to have an election for Chair of the Operations Policy and Planning Committee. So if trustees could text their vote for Chair of Operations Policy and Planning Committee, your choices are Trustee Rob Painter or Trustee Elaine Leonard. So please text one of those names to Kim and Deb, and then they will scrutineer and they will let us know the result. So I'll give you 1 minute to get that through. Okay, 30 seconds. Okay, and time is up. All votes should now be in for the election of the Operations Policy and Planning Committee Chair, and we will wait for the scrutineered results. Okay, and the results are in, and I want to congratulate Elaine Leonard as Chair of the Operations Policy and Planning Committee. And of course, thank Trustee Rob Painter for being willing to stand to fill that position. So we'll now go to C2, Trustee Reports. This is an opportunity for a trustee to provide 2 minutes for a verbal presentation. We have one report.
Whoa, excuse me,
sorry,
Chair.
Trustee Whitaker, go ahead. Yep.
Point of order, you've missed D, standing committee assignments.
Oh, right. My apologies. Thank you. I jumped past that. Trustees have received by email the standing committee and district committee and municipal liaison assignments. This is supposed to be on the website under supplementary items. It will either be listed here. I know the website's been down, and it'll either be here now or tomorrow morning, but that has been provided to trustees. Trustee Whitaker.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on this because when you sent out the request for trustees' input, you emailed last Wednesday at 9:07 a.m. with a 4 p.m. deadline. And noting that I work until 4:30 and I start before 9, I was unable to reply. So it's not like I'm going to change the bylaws or get my colleagues to send you a bunch of emails explaining that that wasn't fair. But I did want to point that out going forward, that it's really important that you provide us with 24 hours to respond because we do work. I also wanted to just make comment that the list that I received had the Equity Committee on it, which doesn't exist anymore. And you also had the Advocacy and Public Engagement Committee, which is only an advocacy committee. The public engagement piece was struck a year or so ago. So I think we just need to make those changes. And I also wanted to inquire, the Policy Subcommittee, the intent to that committee was that it would rotate, and the same committee assignment has been for the past 2 rotations. So I'm wondering what was the thought process and decision making from not rotate that committee as was intended.
Yeah, so you are correct, Trustee Whitaker. I did put out that request, noticing the compressed timeline that we had since I was elected chair, and attempting to fulfill those duties as I also work full-time, if not more. Do acknowledge I did get that out late. My apologies. I did allow, as trustees will know, and Trustee McNally and Trustee Painter also communicated with me after that day, to which I did have conversations. So I was attempting to be as flexible as possible on that. In terms of the corrections, we will look to make those corrections and get that list updated and corrected before it is posted, or if it is already, we'll get that updated. In terms of the policy subcommittee, the request was put out for who would like to sit on what committees, be liaisons for what locations. There was not a request to shift, and so I tried to maintain as much status quo as I could, respecting areas that trustees did indicate they wanted to shift to, and then also respecting Trustee Hentz's new position and needing to shift some work away from her as well because of that request. So attempting to balance the many requests from trustees in a as respectful a way as I possibly could. Trustee Painter.
No, thank you very much. With respect to, and I do acknowledge you did give me the opportunity, and I'm appreciative of that. With respect to the policy review committee, though, we had that set up on an annual rotation. The goal was always supposed to be that, 2 trustees a year would get an opportunity to be directly involved in that policy discussion with the superintendent. And so it was just always going to be rotating on a yearly basis. That was certainly the case with Trustee McNally and myself, and those prior to that. So I hope that might be given some consideration, because it is an interesting position in terms of it provides access to some of the inner conversations that are really helpful to help frame the discussions that then proceed at the board table. And thank you, Chair.
No, thank you, Rob. I do appreciate that. And I appreciate the intention of rotating that through. I'm happy to take another look and inquire as to see how we can make that rotation a little more balanced and allow trustees an opportunity to engage in that important work, because it is important and good work. So I do appreciate your comments. Nicole.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to point out the Victoria High School Visioning group that has not been, to my knowledge anyways, up and running for well over a year. I certainly have not been invited to anything for well over a year. So I just wanted to say that if it is still operational, I have not been invited to a meeting. So I wonder if we could either clarify whether it's still in existence, or if not, maybe just strike that from your consideration of board placements.
Very good. We will take that away, and we will adjust and amend, and we will have I will endeavor to have an amended committee assignment reported to trustees before the end of the week this week, to make sure that we're all up to date. We are going into winter break, so likely any of these meetings and pieces hopefully won't be too impactful, but we'll endeavor to get that correction out. And I do appreciate trustees drawing my attention to it. Any other discussion on the committee assignments? Seeing and hearing none, we'll go to C2 trustee reports and trustee Hensa. Let me just get my handy dandy little timer up here. And you have 2 minutes and you have the floor.
God, knowing there's a timer suddenly makes it really stressful. Yeah, I just wanted to quickly talk to my colleagues and rights holders, stakeholders, and the public. And Anne's question to you, Ryan, about what you learned at Academy really ties in nicely with what I wanted to say. And so I wanted to take a few seconds to really praise Academy, especially the pre-Academy sessions on Thursday. Every speaker on the stage was Indigenous, and we had an absolute multitude of wonderful Indigenous voices. And one of the themes that came up with almost every speaker is the need for us to act like family. We're here to take care of children. We're holding the children in the palm of our hands. We're keeping them in the center of the circle. And that doesn't mean we have to agree. Family has dissenting voices, but we work together with honor and respect. And that's something that I'm really proud of, the work that we've been doing in the last several months, particularly. We're working towards that with the standing committees, having all the trustees on both committees. I think our inaugural meeting of the new format last week, has it only been a week, went really, really well. And side note, big thanks to our new and returning chairs, Tom and Elaine, for taking that on and wrangling twice as many of us at those meetings. Also, the new budget committee, Nicole and Kim have been handling that beautifully with a very large group with all of us trustees and rights holders and partner groups leading us through that. And one of the things that I really like about that budget committee is that we're keeping it informal and using first names instead of going with the long, often clunky titles that I know I certainly trip over. So all this just to say, I'd like to keep us moving in that direction of being informal and yet respectful. And so I will be enacting that by attempting to keep my speech informal. I'm going to be using everybody's first names. I think Zoom time really helps with that, because if the public don't know who we are, we can put it in our name, what the titles are. And so I just wanted to let everybody know it's not out of a lack of respect, but just in keeping with that theme of family and teamwork and moving forward, working together to keep the kids in the center of our work. So thank you.
Thanks, Angie. And I gave you a few extra seconds because I didn't want you to feel pressured to wrap up such an important piece. And I agree with you. My colleagues will likely perhaps notice that I've been calling them by their first names since we've started this meeting. And it is in that respect, not out of a lack of respect, but because I do see us as a family and I want us to work in that spirit. So thank you, Angie, for taking the lead. And I will follow because it's important. Thank you. So we will go to D, Board Committee Reports. D1, Combined Education Policy and Directions Committee and Operations Policy and Planning Committee. So draft combined minutes for December 6, 2021 meeting are for information only. And then we do have some recommended motions from December 6th, 2021 meeting. The first is Cedar Hill Middle School project, Net Zero Energy Ready. I will read the recommended motion into the record. That the Board of Education of School District number 61 Greater Victoria promote Bundle 2, Net Zero Energy Ready with 100 kilowatt PV array at cost of $538,375 for the following reasons. Bundle 3, Net Zero with 272 kilowatt photovoltaic solar array is not feasible with BC Hydro's current net metering regulatory constraints of 100 kilowatt. Less capital costs than Bundle 3, Net Zero with 272 kilowatt PV solar array, and achievable now without relying on changes from BC Hydro, which are not guaranteed. And I will, before we debate, seek any stakeholder input or conversation on this from any of our union or PAC stakeholders or rights holders if they are here. I welcome your comments.
Chair, before you do that, can I just
Yes.
have a clarification here?
Yes.
So I just wanted to clarify that this wasn't, in my recollection, a recommended motion, but rather it was referred to the board meeting at the same time as trustees asked staff to bring back some further information around possible use of multiple BC Hydro accounts in order to get around some of the net metering constraints. I just wanted us to clarify that before we move forward.
No, thank you for that. And I think that's accurate. And certainly when I read recommended motion, it was merely reading off the agenda with an effort to keep consistent. But in any event, I suppose we will want a mover and a seconder for it then. Can I get a mover for this motion so we can get it on the floor? Elaine, second, Tom. Okay, and I understand we probably have staff wanting to speak to this, so I will go to Secretary Treasurer Morris.
And sorry, Chair, just to follow up. And so our rights and our stakeholders will have an opportunity to speak after staff present.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. Yeah, I've put the offer out there, but staff can speak now, and then I'll invite the rights holders and stakeholders back as well. Thank you, Nicole. Appreciate it. Kim, go ahead.
Thank you, Brian. Seems strange to call you by your first name in the open board meeting, but I will also follow. So we have Marnie Vistison Harwood here with us, our Associate Director of Facilities, and she has a bit of a Q&A to read out based on the questions we thought we heard at the ops meeting. And so I'll turn it over to Marnie. And I believe she also has some new information perhaps around electric boilers and things like that, that she may want to share tonight. So thanks, Marnie.
You're welcome. Okay, so for the net, the multi-meter meters on site, so having 3 meters on one site, and we did get confirmation from BC Hydro. They have approved something similar to this on sites before. However, the biggest difference is we'd have to build 2 buildings on the site. In each building would have its own meter. So that would incur some more costs to the project. And doing that, we'd also have to get BC Hydro to approve 2 separate net metering applications on the site as well. So the best way to do this is they said we'd have to apply for a load displacement project. And there's a study involved, and they said it is costly and the cost would be incurred by the school district. And this would also, on top of that, we'd also have to approve it completely through the ministry as well. So it could also increase our risks and increase our budget and delay the project. So there's a couple of levels there. Someone asked if we could actually do an electric boiler on site and get rid of natural gas. The natural gas boiler, just to give you an idea, it's going to be used for about 3% of the heating load for the entire year. So it's not large. We could move to an electric boiler as well. There's not going to be much change in installation costs, but the biggest concern is it's going to change our, most likely will change our metering rates. So we'll go from medium service rate to a large structure service rate. So our monthly bills will be a lot larger moving forward. So that's something to keep in mind. And this again, because it's a design change, will have to be approved by the ministry for the funding. I think that was the 2 biggest questions that were asked last week.
Okay, thanks, Marnie. Kim, did you have anything further to add?
Yeah, I thought there was one more question. I'm just going to look at the document. Oh, I think one of the, I'll just read them. They're here. One of the questions was, does the cost of bundle 2 include infrastructure to add solar panels included in bundle 3 at a later date? If not, is it possible? And what is the additional cost to be ready to add solar panels? Yeah. So the answer is the cost of the structural for bundle 2 is 100,000 and is included in the 538K. In bundle 2. If the board wants to add the remaining solar at a later date, this is an additional $172,000. We answered the question, how many days of or how much percentage of the year would we need the gas? That's 3%. And the multiple sites of metering. And then we said if we reject gas on the site at all, in its entirety, how does that impact scope and schedule? And would that require going back to Treasurer because of scope change? If an impact on schedule, what would be the approximate delay? So we need to make a decision by the end of January so that we can move into design and submit that to the ministry, is my understanding. We need to ask the ministry for approval as it does change our scope. And I think that was the end of the questions that we heard from the last meeting.
All right, thank you, Kim, and thank you, Marnie. So we do have a motion on the floor. Trustees, the motion is over to you for discussion and debate. Before that, we will turn to stakeholders, rights holders. If you have any comments, you can either raise your virtual hand or your physical hand, and I will see if I can't track you down. I do see Angela Carmichael would like to speak. So Angela, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and congratulations, Ryan, on the chair. BC PAC would look forward to scheduling a meeting with you as well. But we do want to speak to this motion. We declared a climate emergency here in SD61 a couple of years ago, and I think every decision that this board makes needs to be climate action related. We cannot wait. I've been hearing from parents and caregivers and guardians for years, the last 2 years since we declared the climate emergency in this district, that they want to see action. So anything that we can approve that is going to start us on the way to having, net zero emissions in our schools, let's approve it, please. That's what I'm getting from the parents and mostly from the students. And I think you guys are listening to the students more and more these days, which is helpful. And what they're saying is they would like to have greener buildings. If we're going to build any buildings, let's make them as green as possible so that we have, a future for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. And yes, let's set that meeting up. So any other rights holders or stakeholders wishing to speak before the trustees debate? I'm seeing none, just scrolling through here. Okay, trustees, the floor is yours. I put the motion to you. And Nicole, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I just had a couple of questions. I wondered if, through the Chair, to either Kim or Marnie, we could get some clarification on the multiple accounts and how using multiple accounts to increase the ability of the design to take into account more solar panels would increase the cost to us. So my understanding was that the whole point of using solar panels and to having a larger array was to get us down to zero emissions, and so essentially being self-sufficient in producing our own power. And so how does that put us into a higher, I'm not sure what the terminology is, but a higher cost bracket from a BC Hydro perspective? My understanding was that they were going to, they would capture any power generation for us to then either use at a later date or to sell back to the grid. So yeah, if you could clarify that for me, I would appreciate it.
I would, through the Chair, I would pass that to Marnie.
If we have more than 1 meter on the site, we're going to have 2 separate buildings, which means we're going to have 2 separate heating units, which means 2 separate electric boilers, 2 separate everything. With that, we'd have to get net metering applications for the 100 kilowatt net metering demand, and the demand charges are based on the load of your building. So if you have a wood shop and all your lights, and then 2 boiler plants, you're going to go over that demand charge for BC Hydro. And that's what kind of sways it. So the demand charge, they look at the worst possible month, which is usually December when you heat your buildings most. And that's what they charge you throughout the year. And so if you're in the medium rate, it's about $6. And then if you go to a higher rate, it's about $13 in your demand charges. So that's where the costs get incurred. So you want to we're trying to keep most of our middle schools in the medium rate class service structure and not jump them into the high class, which is most of our secondary schools are in the large rate class structure.
Thank you, Marnie. Oh, I'm getting some feedback. Nicole, follow up?
Yeah, please, thanks. So the demand charge is not based on your actual use. So it's based on an assessment of what you would use if you were requiring their power.
No, it's what you do use. It's your worst case month. So they look at the month, like your rates over the course of a year, and they take your worst month, and that's what they calculate the rest of the months on, is my understanding of it. So it's not, they don't look at one day at a time. They kind of look at 1 month at a time and take your worst case scenario. And then they charge you that rate for the rest of the year.
Okay, I feel like I'm missing something, but maybe, so if we were to go to solar, again, the idea would be that we don't require any power from BC Hydro because we're producing our own. And I guess that's where I'm unclear. I'm obviously missing a piece in terms of setting that demand charge. If in fact we're not using BC Hydro generated power, we're using our own power generated through solar.
Well, it's you're not going to be able to. It's your annual consumption throughout the year that it ends up to be the net zero consumption. So you are going to use BC Hydro. You're going to use BC Hydro power on some months of the year, and that's what you're going to get charged on. So over the course of a year, that's what your solar power is generating for. It's not just each month you produce what you need. It's you look over at the course of a year.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Nicole. Anne, question?
Thank you. And, you know, I more than ever really wanted to go with option 3. And it's so sad because I really want to thank everyone for the work that they've done on this, because I do believe that this is our best option, although it's not the option that I think that we want. And for me, it's sad to know that it's not the technology that holds us back from doing more and doing better for climate change and for ensuring that we are making all of the changes that we possibly can. The technology's there. What isn't there is the infrastructure. And what I'm learning through this is how we need to democratize the infrastructure of BC Hydro so that they are not setting these limits. And I am quite shocked that government isn't having these conversations and we aren't looking at that, because it seems like we have all of the means and the ability to do this, but we don't have the authority, or somebody won't let us do it. So through this whole process, I can't believe how sad I am for something that I should have been so excited about. And a year ago, I would have been really excited for this net zero or whatever we're calling it now. But it certainly speaks to the amount of work that we as individuals and as district, and I think in a society, have to do to really make big change in every, because obviously this isn't enough. We need to get to no emissions, and we can't do it because BC Hydro has the infrastructure and is ensuring that they continue to get their profits off of it. So I will support the motion, but with a great deal of sadness.
Hey, thank you, Anne. Any other trustees want to comment on this motion before we go to a vote? Seeing and hearing none, I will then call the question on the motion. I don't think I need to reread it. All those in favor, please signify raising your hand. And that carries unanimously. Thank you, trustees. We'll now go to BC Hydro net metering cap. Motion that the Board of Education of School District number 61 advocate for BC Hydro to lift the 100 kilowatt net metering cap by advocating directly to BC Hydro and through BCSDA to BC Hydro, Minister of Education, Minister of Finance, Minister of Environment, and Clean BC. Can I have a mover for this motion so we can get it on the floor, please? Moved by Nicole, seconded by Anne. Anything from staff? This is an advocacy piece, obviously based off of the previous motion and Cedar Hill. I'm not sure if staff have any comments.
Can I just ask a point of clarification, where I do appreciate you got 2 motions, but this wasn't a motion that came out of the committee meeting. It's sort of been made from there, or did I miss something?
I thought it did come from the committee, but I can Yeah, I thought it did come forward from the combined committee. Yeah.
I know it was a discussion. I just don't remember it being a motion. So never mind. I'm sorry.
Nope, that's okay. It's always good to check. Lots going on. Okay,
It
so
was a motion.
yeah.
If it was a motion, then it doesn't need a mover and a seconder.
Okay, that's maybe where I'm getting confused then. So
It was passed the committee.
in any event, it is on the floor, so we can discuss it. Do our stakeholders and rights holders want to comment on this before the board debates? Angela, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Ryan, we're doing this now. We support this motion because we should be advocating, especially when there's a monopoly and a conglomerate involved. And we would hope that this board would advocate for not just the needs and the rights of its students, but just for the community in general. And so taking this straight to BC Hydro is what we'd like to see happen. So thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Anybody else from stakeholders, rights holders want to comment on this? And if not, I will go to trustees. Anne, you are first.
Actually, sorry, I just think I really want to amend this a little bit.
Sure.
So I want to remove in the second line, it says, anyway, it goes, the Board of Education of School District 61 advocate for BC Hydro to lift. I want to strike for BC Hydro. I just want to advocate to lift the BC Hydro 100 kilowatt net metering cap by advocating through the BC, and I want to remove BC Hydro because I don't think they're the people we need to be advocating to. We should include them CCing in the message, but I think we really need to focus this on the ministries as well as to government itself. I think this is a big fall down that people aren't on top of this.
Okay, thank you. And do trustees have a good sense of that amendment? So that is being moved by Anne. I just want to make sure we have a seconder before we debate. Is there a seconder for that, Angie? Okay. And Nicole, I know you've got your hand up, so I'll go to you first. Go ahead.
I was just going to make a suggestion, if I may. So I believe that it's the BC Utilities Commission that ultimately would be the approval body. So it might be that it's the BC Utilities Commission that we would want to add. That might support, I think, where Trustee Whitaker is going with this. Thanks.
I think that makes good sense, Nicole. Thank you. So that's a friendly we can just accept to just tack on BCUC to this. Anne, did you have a follow-up to that?
No, I just wanted to say that was exactly what I was trying to find in my head. So thank you.
Great. Okay. So we have the amendment before us. Elaine?
Is it a friendly amendment just to throw in the premier too? Because just because we're sending it to his ministers, it might be more proactive if we send it to him as well.
I'll accept that because I believe in the spirit of Anne's amendment that she said government. So I feel that includes the premier. So let's email them all. Rob, go ahead.
I'm requesting a bit of clarification, and I think it's relevant either to the base message or the amendment that we're currently considering. And that just has to do with the net metering process and what Marnie was able to share with us just now. Sort of had, it finally turned on a light, if you will. Is there a different way that schools can be assessed for electricity rates, or is it solely net metering? And if there's more than one way, could you just explain the distinction? And through you, Chair, to staff as appropriate.
Thanks, Rob. Kim or Marnie, feel free to field that one.
I would pass that to Marnie.
There's only one way. It has to be through the net metering program through BC Hydro.
Okay, so it's not like no one comes out and reads our meters on a daily basis or a monthly basis or anything like that. It's based once. I'm sure they track it, but it's based on our worst month of the year?
The demand charges on it's based on the monthly billing consumption.
Okay.
The net metering is a different, distinct program, and you have to apply for it and be approved. And they look at the site as a whole. So they take a look at the new Cedar Hill Middle School and the consumption for that site, and that's the site that you're applying for.
Oh, okay, but just to clarify then, all of our schools are on net metering, if I understand. That is the way that schools are assessed for electrical charges, or is there another way?
I don't believe there's another way. And
Okay.
it's the net metering is for the solar power, if I'm not mistaken. Chuck, can you clarify?
Sure, through the chair. The schools have a meter, electrical meter, same as you do at home. Where it puts us in a different rate only because of the amount of electricity we use.
Right.
The net metering is for when you add self-generating electricity, such as with solar power. So that helps them. They've got a formula for that. Was there something else on that one, Martin?
No, so
okay.
It basically, the net metering is they will essentially credit us up to 100 kilowatts of generated electricity that goes into the grid against our on-site usage.
That's correct. And they've got a limit on that right now, as Marty explained. So we can only generate 100 kilowatts.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Any other comments on the amendment to the motion before we vote? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call the question on the amendment to the motion. All of those in, oh, Anne, sorry, I saw you go off mute. Did you want to?
No, I just thought you might have wanted me to read it, but it's okay.
Oh, no, yeah, please go ahead. It might be good. Yeah.
That the Board of Education of School District number 61 advocate to lift the BC Hydro 100-watt net metering cap by advocating directly to the BC Utilities Commission, the Minister of Education, Minister of Finance, Minister of Environment, Clean BC, and the BC government, and CC BC Hydro in those letters.
Very good. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that looks like it's unanimous, so that passes. Thank you, everybody. Elaine?
I'm hoping that the letter will also include lots of language about climate change and the BC government's commitment to climate change, as well as all the school districts in that letter as well, to hype it up, because just asking them to remove the cap doesn't say why we want it.
Yes, and I would add to that, to members of the public who are watching tonight, you have seen the challenges that this board has faced with this particular issue. I encourage you to write to the government and tell them the problem that this has caused for us. We want to do good work, but we need your support as well. So please do advocate to your MLA and to the government. They need to hear from you. So we will now go to C, School Shops Health and Safety Audit. Motion which did come from the last committee meeting, so we don't need mover and a seconder. It is recommended motion, but I will read it. Now, the Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, direct the superintendent to provide monthly progress reports at the Operations Policy and Planning Standing Committee in relation to the outstanding school shop health and safety issues identified in the school shop health and safety audits from 2016 to 2017. And I imagine trustees will be okay if we just friendly that one to be combined Operations Policy and Education Policy and Directions Committee, because those are all combined now. Oh, no, they're not. I'm sorry. I am very tired. Never mind. Forget I said anything at all. So the motion is on the floor. If any stakeholders would like to speak to this, now is your opportunity. And Angela, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Ryan. So we support this motion, and we just wanted to remind trustees and staff that it's our children entering those shops, and we hold our children very dear, as I'm sure you understand, and you hold your own children and family very dear to you. So we would love as many reports as we could get, whether they be weekly, bi-weekly, daily. We'll take daily, because what we're wanting to make sure that you understand is that these children are walking into shops that may not be in tip-top shape. It may not be the safest that they could be. And we need to be able to provide better to children in this district. This is Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. And we should have our shops and all of our classrooms and schools up to par when it comes to safety of our students. So we do hope that this motion passes, and thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Any other rights holders or stakeholders wish to speak before the board debates? Seeing and hearing none, did staff have any comments on this one? No, okay. Trustees, the floor is yours on this motion. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I will call the question on this motion. All of those in favor, please signify by raising your hands. And all those opposed? Any abstentions? Trustee Hensa, I'm sorry, I don't think I saw your vote.
Sorry, my internet cut out there for a sec.
Yeah.
No, I was in favor.
Okay, good, thank you. So that passes unanimously. And trustees, my apologies. I got a note that we passed the amendment on the net metering cap advocacy motion, but not the main motion. So we're just going to jump back to that real quick and just pass the motion, the amended motion, or the new main motion. So again, BC Hydro net metering cap, the motion as amended is before us. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. And that is unanimous. Okay, D, letter to ministries regarding climate action. Do I have consensus from the board to waive reading of this so we can just put it on the floor? Looks like we're okay. All right, thank you, everybody. So the motion is on the floor. Would anyone like to discuss from our stakeholders and rights holders before we go to debate? Angela, go ahead.
Thank you. I have lots to say. This goes along with what we were saying before, how anything that we can do, any way that we can advocate for a greener school district, we're asking you as parents to do so. It's very important to us and to our children that we advocate to every level of government possible for greener ways to school. And thank you for that.
Thank you, Angela. I'm sure the board is happy to have a strong partner in advocating for these pieces. So thank you. Anne, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just noticing in the motion, second to last line, it says to a net zero, and I thought we were trying to use a different language than net zero, and I'm just trying to go back through my notes. Who remembers what that should be?
It was zero carbon.
Zero
emission.
Zero emission. Zero emission. Thank you.
On the agenda pack up, it's correct, I believe, and it's just that the memo doesn't reflect the amendment made at committee.
Okay, so can we just change that in the motion? Are we all good with that?
I think that's fine. I don't think we need trustees. I'll just field that for the board. Are we okay with just shifting that wording? That's pretty simple. Okay, yeah, we're good. So we'll shift that. Any other comments or questions or debate on this? Seeing and hearing none, I will call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. All those opposed? No, that is unanimous. Very good. E, letter to ministries regarding bus replacement. This is relatively short, so I'm okay to read it. That the Board of Education of School District number 61 write a letter to the Minister of Education and Minister of Finance to request that going forward, the level of funding for bus replacement be set at the cost of the purchase price for electric buses, and further that the board understand that the ministry sets the schedule of bus replacement based on age and mileage of the vehicle, and that the funding standard is applied against the cost of a diesel and gas-driven vehicle. Any stakeholder or rights holder comments on this? I'm getting a head shake from Angela, so we can go forward to board for discussion. This is a recommended motion, so we don't need to move it. It is on the floor. And go ahead.
Can I just get clarification on everything following and further? Why do we need that in there?
I believe this was originally Nicole's motion. Nicole, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, the and further was just added at committee. I actually didn't have and further in the original motion, but it was felt that to link the two pieces together and further would be the way to do it. And so that was changed at committee. So I can't really speak to that other than to say that it was a way to link the two parts of the motion together.
Sure, maybe Elaine can speak to it. Elaine?
Well, first of all, it was to strike all of this, and further, we were going to strike it all. And Nicole motivated that she's felt that that part of her motion needed to stay in, and this was the only way to have it make any sense to be included in the motion that way. So one of the amendments was to strike it all, everything after and further. So that would still be a discussion to have here if you wanted to.
Yeah, and I leave that to the board for their decision. We do have the motion as it reads in front of us. Anne, go ahead.
I have an amendment.
Sure, go ahead, please.
So in the and further, that the board understands that the ministry sets, I want to strike the ministry sets, and I want to go to that the board understands that the current schedule of bus replacement is based on age, because I think that's what we're trying to do, is make the connection that currently the schedule is currently biased towards gas and diesel because it is based on that type of product. Am I correct, Trustee Duncan? Okay, very good.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So I think that if we can just make this amendment, it would to the current schedule of bus replacement is based on the age and mileage of the vehicle, based on a cost of diesel or gas-driven vehicles rather than an electric bus or an electric vehicle. Does that help?
Yeah, I think that helps. I'll just see if I've got, do I have a seconder for that amendment first? Nicole, very good. We can go to a vote, or I can just see if we have consent of the board to just change that wording. That'll speed things up a bit. Yeah, we're all happy with it. Okay, good. So we have consent to change that. So we don't, it is on the board, on the floor, but we all just voted. So we'll say that that is amended. So we have an amended motion in front of us. Is there any further discussion, and is everybody clear on what was just amended? I'm not seeing any puzzled looks, so I think we are good. So the motion is in front of us as amended. All of those in favor, please raise your hand. And that looks like it's unanimous. Very good. Next, F, reaffirm $10 a day childcare plan. As a reminder, I will not be voting on this. I'm happy to oversee the discussion, and I'm happy to write the letter, but I will not be voting due to a pecuniary conflict of interest on this motion. So can I dispense with reading by consent of the board? Looks like I've got consent. Excellent. Stakeholders and rights holders, any comments on this one? Angela, please go ahead. I thought you might.
Thanks, Ryan. I just want to, implore the district to remember how important it is to have safe, affordable, reliable childcare, especially in this city. We know that children do better when their parents are less stressed, and so the more childcare spaces that are affordable, the less stressed parents are, and we really, really want this to go through. We know that it is, out of your hands, but if you could write as many letters as you could, reminding the powers that be how important this is, not only for our parents, but for the students, because when mom and dad are less stressed, or grandma and grandpa are less stressed, or we know that we've got a safe place to send a child, it makes the rest of your day so much easier. So we need more childcare spaces in the city, and we need them to be affordable. The city is growing and people are still having children. So please write that letter for us. If we could pass this motion, that would be really helpful. Thanks.
Thanks, Angela. And my apologies, trustees. I'm recalling from the meeting that I actually did vote on this one because I felt it wasn't specific enough to actually engage with my work and didn't provide a conflict. So mea culpa on that. Just wanted to correct the record. So I will vote on this because I do feel I have the space to do so. Any discussion? Anne, I see you have your not on mute, so you want to speak to it. Go ahead.
Oh, that's just becoming a habit. The other way, I don't need to plug in the Loonie. I forget to turn it off. I'm just going to say,
save money.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, I brought this motion forward again, like President Carmichael. I feel the same way. I've worked with a lot of single parents, and there is no other way. This is the best way to change the trajectory of a young single mother, is to help her get childcare. What we can do to support that family, getting them into school, it all depends on childcare. That's the start. If we can't get them childcare, we can't help them with changing their lives for better opportunities, which helps everyone. So I'm very confident this will pass.
Thanks, Anne. I couldn't have said it better, so I think that's very good. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor, please signify raising your hand. And that is unanimous. Very good. Board, well done on all of those. Just a few left. G, letter of support to school districts affected by recent floods. And that the Board of Education of School District 61 direct the board chair to write letters of support to Chilliwack, Abbotsford, Fraser, Cascade, and Nicholas and Milton school districts affected by recent floods, landslides, and road closures. Any rights holders or stakeholders wish to speak to this? Angela.
Thank you, Ryan. We also support this motion. I think it's been a rough go for everyone, and if we can support our friends, neighbors, and colleagues, we should do that. And I know that getting a letter of support can go a long way for morale. So yes, we support that motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Any discussion from the board or trustees? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous. Very good. H, revised bylaw 9330.1 appeal process, that the Board of Education of School District number 61 Greater Victoria approve the revised bylaw 9330.1 and notice of appeal and feedback on appeal process forms as presented. It is recommended, so it is on the floor. Do any stakeholders or rights holders wish to speak to this? Angela shaking her head no, she wants a break. So we will go to the board and trustees for any discussion on this. Nicole, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to start by saying thank you very much to the superintendent and any staff involved in kind of bringing us to where we are with this. I note that the changes and amendments suggested at the combined standing committee meetings have been incorporated. And so thank you so much for that. I just have one minor amendment still. Just at that very last paragraph, which speaks to the right of appeal. Thank you so much for including that line around that we will include the avenue of appeal in the notification to the appellant. I wonder if we could just add the ombudsperson. Obviously, the superintendent of appeals is one avenue, but I think we want to just acknowledge that the ombudsperson in some cases may be the other avenue of appeal. But other than that, thank you so much for the work done.
Thanks, Nicole. Kim, or staff, any comment or concerns on that? No, I think I got a head shake. Okay,
Well,
excellent. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Kim.
Sorry, am I muted or not? I would check in with the superintendent.
Okay, Deb, over to you.
Yeah, no, we can make that adjustment in 9, correct?
Sorry, let me just double check the numbering. That's right, 9. Yeah, that very last paragraph on page 83 of the backup.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Deb. And thanks, Nicole. Rob.
Yeah, just one thing I was hoping to add, and the language is already in there just below, so I'm hoping it's an acceptable change. In the section about meeting with a designated employee, I would like to add that the appellant may be accompanied by a support person of their choice in the same way that it is mentioned in the next paragraph. And this is simply to keep the process as unthreatening as possible. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Well, Deb, how is that? Does that look for you? Is that?
I can add that. That's B from section 6 up into 5 as well.
Yeah, a duplication. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Any other trustees wish to speak on this with any concerns or additions or changes? If not, I think we can move forward. Okay, seeing and hearing no further comments or questions, I'll call the question on the revised bylaw 9330.1 appeal process. So can I have all those in favor, please raise your hand.
And that's as amended, Chair, sorry?
Yeah, as amended. Yeah, that's
Okay,
right.
thank you.
Yeah. And those opposed? And that none opposed, so it is unanimous. So we'll now go to revised bylaw 9330.1 appeal process bylaw readings. So just for the information of the public, in order to give 3 readings of a bylaw in one night, we have to receive unanimous consent from the board. Otherwise, we can go through 2 readings at most, and the next reading would have to come at a later board meeting. So we'll go through the first set here that the Board of Education of School District number 61 Greater Victoria agreed to give all 3 readings to revised bylaw 9330.1 appeal process at the meeting of December 13th, 2021 must be carried unanimously to give all 3 readings. Can I have a mover, please? And a seconder. Thank you. Moved by Elaine, seconded by Nicole. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor of giving all 3 readings tonight? And that is unanimous. Okay. We'll go to the first reading that revised bylaw 9330.1 appeal process be read a first time the 13th day of December 2021. Can I get a motion to move? Moved by Elaine, seconded by Tom. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor, please signify. And it's unanimous. Next up, that revised bylaw 9330.1 appeal process be read a second time the 13th day of November 2021. Can I get a mover? Moved by Elaine, seconded by Jordan. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor, please signify. That is unanimous as well. And third reading, that revised bylaw 9330.1 appeal process be read a third time, passed and adopted the 13th day of December 2021. Can I get a mover, please? Moved by Elaine, seconded by Nicole. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify. And that is unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Very well done. We'll go to district leadership team reports, interim superintendent's report. Deb, I will turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Ryan. In the interest of time, I will draw your attention to pages 88 and 89 and just surface a couple of things. First and foremost, we have Isabella and Sadie joining us today as student representatives. They're still on the call, 9:25 on a school night, recognizing they may not stay the entire time, but thank them very much for coming on. Also, December 6th, as a note, we had the Student Representative Advisory Committee meeting. We also had trustees and principals and vice principals from the secondary schools join Devika from the Canadian Centre for Diversity and Inclusion, who spoke to us about unconscious bias. So that was a very meaningful presentation and lots of conversations. And then lastly, as a gratitude to close us out for this December report, with great appreciation and gratitude, I want to recognize Dana Marchant, who is retiring or did retire on the 6th of December after 20 years of service in the district. Very, very impactful for supports and services to both students, families, and staff. So many thanks from us to Dana as she embarks on a new journey. I just wanted to bring that to light of the board and the meeting this evening.
Thank you, Deb. And we have a recommended motion to accept or receive, rather, the superintendent's report. I'm just scrolling back up my pages here. Apologies, trustees. All right, so that the Board of Education of School District number 61 received the interim superintendent's report as presented. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Tom, seconded by Anne. Is there any discussion on the monthly report? Rob, go ahead.
Through you, Chair, to the Superintendent. I realize this isn't the appropriate time, but when it is, I'd really be interested to know what the plan is for trying to fill Dana's shoes. You know, clearly she was an exceptional resource in this district, constantly on the go. I can't think of a school that she didn't support, and just really curious what we're going to be doing moving forward.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on the superintendent's report? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of receipt of the report, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous. Trustee questions. Anne.
So I don't have a trustee question, and I hope that my comments, I do have a comment though, and I hope that my comments will be taken with an open heart. Just noting that Trustee Hensa and yourself have made this decision to call us by our first names. And while I appreciate the sentiment of where that's coming from, my family doesn't call me Anne. And I just want to say, I don't want to be called Anne in these meetings. So while you might want to be called Ryan, I'm quite happy to call you Ryan, but my name is either Anne Whitaker or Trustee Whitaker. My family does not call me Anne, and I don't find it family feeling, as you're saying. So I just want to make that comment that while we are trying to do something wonderfully, we need to do those things by talking and with those people that it affects, as you say. And I don't remember anybody asking me, but I'm going to be bold and say, you know what, if somebody had asked me, I would have said, you know what, I'm not okay with that. So I'm just going to make that statement. I appreciate where it comes from, and I hope that you will take it from me in that place that, to me, it's not having the intended outcome. So sorry.
Sure. No, Trustee Whitaker, I appreciate that. And I appreciate that it landed hard for you. So that's, regretful, mea culpa on that. And we're here to respect everybody's wishes around the table, trustees, stakeholders, rights holders. So appreciate that. And we'll make sure to note it going forward. Any trustee questions for the interim superintendent's report? Nicole.
Yeah, hi. I just wondered, hi, everybody, Ryan and co, and Trustee Whitaker, thanks for your comments. I know we're here as in our official capacity, and I completely appreciate where you're coming from. This is through the chair to the superintendent. I'm wondering if we can get an update on the status of discussions with the ministry on the funding gap, the shortfall to support the third year of the 2-2-2 mandate. During our budget process, we identified, and Ms. Axford identified in her report, the fact that our school district, amongst a small handful of other districts, didn't receive full funding for that third year of that 2% mandate. So I'm wondering where we are with our discussions with the ministry.
Thanks, Nicole. Who wants to field that? Kim, okay.
I can through Deb, if that's okay. Yeah, so I did reach out to the ministry, and they confirmed what I had explained as well. So the per pupil amounts in the operating grant are increased by the collective agreement increases. So if we get $7,800 per child, and there's a 2% increase in a collective agreement, we'll get $7,800 plus 2% in the following year, or in the year of the collective agreement increase. And we are to make decisions based on that operating grant that we get from the ministry, which is increased by collective agreement increases. We can see from some of the talking tables and budget presentations, when we compare ourselves to the rest of the province, we don't have as much transportation, we don't have as much administration. We've made room in our budget to make some choices with our operating grant to hire more teachers than another district may be able to, a smaller district that doesn't have the economies of scale that we do. And so that is not up to the ministry to fund. Those are choices that we make within our operating grant, which, as I reiterate again, is increased by collective agreement increases. So where another district may not be able to afford or be able to make the choices to make room to hire more teachers, we do have that ability, and to fund each district on how it chooses to staff based on its operating grant choices is not something the ministry does.
Nicole, did you want to follow up on that?
Yeah,
ahead.
I do. So thank you to the chair, to the secretary treasurer. I appreciate that response. I can't say as it's entirely clear to me, you know, in a year where we've got a 2-2-2 mandate, which is, you know, the public and certainly I as a member of the board understood that the province was fully funding. You know, I can't say as I understand why that full funding for that salary increase would be tied to the operational grant rather than to the staffing complement in each district. But I suppose that's another question for maybe some further advocacy. I'm not sure. So essentially, we've accepted the position of the ministry. And we're not going to do any other advocacy to try to address that imbalance. And have we reached out to other districts to find out what kind of advocacy that they're doing, given that shortfall that they've experienced as well?
I don't, in my opinion, as the secretary treasurer, my explanation has been the same all along. The operating grant is increased, and the choices we make within it are different from district to district to district. And in my opinion, it's not up to the taxpayer or the ministry to increase the teacher salary line item based on the choices we make within the operating grant when other districts can't make the same choices because they have higher transportation or require more snow tires or have more cold weather and their utilities are higher. We all make choices within the operating grant, and that has been my explanation all through last year as well. I reached out to the ministry to ask for their explanation. That is the same as my explanation. I have not reached out to any other districts to see how they've advocated. To me, it's a very clear explanation. And especially when I look at how we compare to the provincial average or the province as a whole. But it's at the board's discretion what it would like to do.
Thanks, Kim. And just Nicole on that, I'm not aware of anything coming through BCSTA on that. I may be mistaken, but I don't think anything's come through either provincial council or AGM last year.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. And I'll review Ms. Axford's recommendations again, just to refresh my mind about her point around it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for sure. Rob, over to you.
Perhaps things just aren't clicking for me. It would be my understanding that the allocation to pay for the teachers' 2% salary increase would come in from the government right off the bat, and that it would simply be an input that was worked into the calculations. Everything else that has been discussed, whether we spend it on transportation or we hire more teachers per student or everything else, that's all internal after the fact. It was my understanding, I guess similar to Trustee Duncan, that what I heard at budget last year is that the government inputs before any decisions were made were actually lower for us, that we were not fully funded because they tied it to per capita student grants, and we had lost students that year. So we ended up having to pay out of other elements of that operational funding to make up for the shortfall that was associated with the teacher salary. So it feels like we're talking about two different things somehow.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Kim, I don't know if you have any follow-up on that or any thoughts on that reflection.
I don't at this time. I think we could further explain it during a budget meeting, perhaps?
Sure. Why don't we try to circle back to it at a future date? Rob, is that fine with you?
That's fine with me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, darn it. Elaine, I saw your hand up. Go ahead.
That was going to be my suggestion, that this discussion is not appropriate at this table. It should be moved to the budget table.
Thank you. Any further discussion, or sorry, any further trustee questions for the interim superintendent's report? Seeing and hearing none, we can go to the secretary treasurer's report. Secretary Treasurer Morris, Kim, over to you.
In the interest of time, my report is attached for consideration and any questions.
Thank you. We have a motion that the Board of Education of School District number 61 receive the Secretary Treasurer's report as presented. Can I have a mover? Moved by Elaine, seconded by Angie. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous. Next, SJ Burnside Alternate School Site Disposal Bylaw 2021, third reading. Do I have consent of the board to waive this as read? It is very long. Thank you very much. Okay, so just a reminder, first reading was done on the 25th day of October 2021. Second reading was done 25th day of October 2021. We are now going to the third reading, 13th day of 2021, and seeking to pass and adopt it today as well. Any stakeholder or rights holder discussions on this? Seeing none. Trustees, any debate or discussion on this motion? Rob, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to just make another request that if maps or images of that sort where there is fine detail, if that's submitted with the report, that it be submitted as a PDF. I tried really hard to look at this document, and yet I just found that I guess it's a JPEG or something like that, an image form, and it's illegible. The reason that I was looking hard at this is because of my confusion about Area A, or forget exactly how it is termed in the quitclaim or the bylaw, sorry. But A includes both the dogleg proposed construction area and a smaller field that's highlighted in bold. And it was always my recollection that the quitclaim referred to the chunk of the dogleg at the back end of the school field and not that rectangle. That rectangle was going to be maintained as open green space. And quite honestly, I can't make sense of whether that is in here or not in here or what, but I know that the quitclaim was always referred when we went on site visits as the back end of the lot. So if I could get some clarification about that, I'd appreciate it.
Thanks, Rob. Kim?
Yeah, I think the diagram shows the quitclaim area, and I'm not sure what other information you've been told, unless Chuck has some insight into what was discussed previously or shown as the property during your tour. I'm not sure. Sorry, Rob.
The best I can offer at this point is there is a green area going to be maintained. It's going to have some trees in it. It's going to have a walk through it. I think that was even shown on the latest report from that. They're the people looking after that.
Thanks, Kim and Chuck. Sorry, go ahead, Rob.
I'm sorry, Chair, if I could ask a point of clarification. Yep. Is that green space, is that part of the land that will be, or the property that be owned by Pacifica Housing? Or does that remain with the school district? I think that's probably what I'm getting at.
Yeah, Pacifica Housing.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Nicole.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to, make it clear that I do not support the motion on the floor and the bylaw. I think it's a shame that, we are on the one hand selling off land, which we then are going to turn around and lease back or use for educational purposes after the fact. I think it's pretty clear that this particular piece of land is not surplus to educational needs. And I think it's unfortunate, given everything that we now know about this project, that we're proceeding in this way. But, I also acknowledge that, the majority of the board has supported this project. I hope that at the very least, we can take some learning away from what has happened here, and that we can start to really do a little bit more due diligence when it comes to our thinking around whether land is surplus to educational needs, and really think in a longer term manner about, not just in the next 5, 10, 15 years, but in the next 60 years, what the needs of our educational community and then the students and families of our region will be.
Thank you, Nicole. Any further discussion, Anne? Or sorry, Trustee Whitaker, my apologies.
Thank you. I just want to remind the board that I'm recusing myself for this from this vote as an employee of Pacifica Housing.
Thank you, Trustee Whitaker. I appreciate the helpful reminder. Any further discussion from trustees? Seeing and hearing none, I will call the question. All of those in favor, please signify, raise your hand. And opposed? And that is Nicole and Rob opposed. And Trustee Whitaker is recusing, so no vote there, and the balance in favor. Nicole, I'm sorry, I saw you raise your hand. Was that a last no vote that I caught? Okay, great.
Yeah, just
great.
making sure you saw my vote, Chair. Thank you.
I did. Thank you. Cedar Hill Middle School Replacement Project Visioning Engagement Report. Kate Lemon, Principal Architect, KMBR. I will turn it over to Kim. I'm not sure if you want to introduce or if we just go right to Kate.
Sure, I can introduce. So Kate Lemon is here. She's the principal architect on the Cedar Hill Middle School replacement project, and she's been guiding us as a district staff, as well as facilitating, and Marianne and Beth leading their staff and students and community through a visioning exercise, and so as well as our engagement report around our survey. And so I think Kate is here tonight to give us her report around visioning for this exciting new project. So I would just turn it over to Kate. And Andy, I think you have a PowerPoint.
I just confirm it's the PDF report.
Yeah, this is actually the report that's going to be posted. I can go through this if that's required, but I have a PowerPoint that just takes out the key elements from this. If
can we ask, or can we give Kate the ability to share, Andy, please?
Absolutely. Please go ahead, Kate. Thank you.
And I think we've got about 5 minutes, Kate.
Yes. So just hang on, make sure you guys can see. So you guys can see my cursor moving here.
Yep. Okay.
I am going to skip over a lot of this. I did put in some extra slides to help if there were questions, but seeing that we're at 9:45 here, I want to not take too long. I did want to just start with, I know that we had a territorial acknowledgement at the beginning of this meeting, but I wanted to do our own, recognizing that KMBR is in Vancouver. I'm joining you from downtown Vancouver tonight. Our firm is committed to the process of decolonization and reconciliation with First Nations and urban Indigenous communities. Before I became an architect, worked in a First Nations law firm, and I spent 3 years advocating for justice for residential school survivors. So this is something that I take very seriously and brought as a priority to our firm when I joined about 9 years ago. So I just quickly want to recognize that here in my office, we live and work in the unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh nations, and also acknowledging that Cedar Hill, where we are doing our work and a lot of our engagement, is located in the traditional territories of the Esquimalt and Songhees nations. And we want to express our gratitude for the opportunity to work and learn in those territories. I am Kate Lemon. I'm one of 3 principals at KMBR, and this is our team. So some of you may have seen us either at the district office or at Cedar Hill. Stefan is our project manager. Joanna is our designer and technologist. She's kind of my right-hand man or girl, a woman. And Greg Brown, who's been working on this project since the very early PDR stages. I don't know if it's been about 5 years, maybe more, 7 years, to get funding from the ministry for the project. I'm going to skip over a bunch of these, but this is just to say that KMBR has an extensive background in education as well as LEED, Net Zero, Passive House. I wanted to just quickly, I know it was not my place during that point in the meeting, but I wanted to say that the barrier that you're coming up against in terms of that net zero metering threshold is not just an issue for your school district, it's an issue for every single school district that we work with. And for all the municipalities as well. I have several other net zero projects that hit this barrier, and the issue is that the barrier pretty much for any municipal building, which is larger than, you know, a triplex, will hit this threshold and have trouble being truly net zero. So I think it's wonderful to advocate for that. And if there's anything that my firm can do to help with that, we would like to, but I would love to see school districts and municipalities all advocating together so that we can get that change that we all want. I won't belabor it. I'll just move forward because that's not what I'm here to talk about. So this is just a quick schedule. This is a 3.5-year process, maybe almost 4 years, and we're right at the very beginning. So we've just barely started. So this is our project timeline. Essentially, we're here in pre-design. Our kickoff was in October. And then in February 2023, we start the construction. And then this was something that we used at the public open house just to talk about the engagement opportunity, so everyone understands where there is opportunities to have discussions and to hear from everyone, and make sure that those concerns and priorities are included in our design. This is the engagement schedule that we have so far. We are in the visioning, so we're in this first part of the engagement process in October, November. We're moving into programming, and it doesn't, it's maybe not proportionally represented here, because when we say workshops in schematic and programming, these are multi-day workshops where we talk to many people. So the proportion of engagement actually will increase, and if we were to do it in terms of how much engagement, it gets bigger and bigger as we go through. But we have been reaching out to as many people as we can, as many stakeholders and rights holders, and in order to hear from everyone and incorporate what they're saying to us into the visioning document. So I'll just quickly get into that. This is the stats on what we're trying to build in terms of what has been funded by the ministry. So 575 students, a future 125 student addition. This is not funded, but we need to leave space for it on the site. So for up to 700 students in the future, the district has said that they don't want to go bigger than that. 2 grass sports fields, and then keeping in mind this is a life safety, so it's a school replacement. And I'm just gonna quickly, we have been working through various, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna skip forward because we don't have much time. I just want to acknowledge also that there are a lot of external inputs into the design. So there are there's a lot of pressure from various institutions. There's neighbors in the community, municipal guidelines and regulations. There's bylaws. There's planning department guidelines, zoning, public transit and biking and walking play into that, and the networks. Ministry of Education, they have area standards, so we cannot build beyond that. There's also the redesigned curriculum, so making sure that we are incorporating the basics of the curriculum into our design. There are user groups that use the site for recreation. There are school district mandates in terms of their 18 characteristics of middle schools and sustainability as a principle. And then there are various site conditions, circulation, pedestrian safety, and feeder schools. And then also keeping in mind that flexibility and future needs is really important. The last school stood on this site for about 90 years. And so we need to make sure that the school that we are building to replace it, it is going to be able to adapt with time as the way we teach changes. So highlights from the redesigned curriculum: personalized learning, ecology and the environment, inclusive perspectives and inclusive knowledge, flexible learning environments. These are all things that that need to be incorporated into the design that we are mandated to look at. The redesigned curriculum is also looking at more holistic teaching and student-centered teaching. So looking at critical thinking, communication, and the social emotional awareness. And it's about understanding, knowing, and doing. And so there's a real push towards hands-on student-centered learning. And I just wanted to point out in here, this is from the Ministry of Education. We have student-centered learning, and we have healthy and effective learning environments, and these are important to take into consideration. In the, and I guess I should go back to, I meant to touch on the stakeholders. So we still have some stakeholder groups that we have reached out to that we plan to have sessions with, but have not been scheduled yet because of their schedules. So we will be meeting with some additional groups in the next coming weeks. But so far, in terms of the vision for the school, this is what we have been hearing. So we heard about, I guess what we've done is we had a number of sort of core values or themes that came out that there was consensus around when we're talking to families, students, teachers, also parents and students and teachers from the feeder schools. Those are the elementary schools that are feeding in, from the neighbors, and talking with the school district. So exploration, these are sort of when we take it and distill it down to a single word. This was a sort of image that we created: inclusion, flexibility, both in the contemporary, so flexibility in the kinds of spaces and the kinds of teaching that occurs now, but also in being able to adapt to future needs, some of which we can foresee and others we cannot. Sustainability, comfort. We heard a lot from students about comfort, and we've included a design driver about that. Welcoming and daylight. There are a number as well of other design drivers that we're seeing as common themes. So a big one that we heard from students is choice. And the students that we talked to, or that the administrators talked to and recorded those sessions, they talked about a strong desire for choice. They want a variety of spaces, a variety of furniture, and a variety of learning experiences. We know that students don't all learn well in the same way, and a lot of students don't learn well by sitting in a desk and looking straight ahead and listening. They need to use their hands, they need to be involved, they need many different ways of learning in order to be successful. So They described wanting open, vibrant social spaces, small, quiet, secluded spaces, different types of chairs, things they could modify to suit their activity at the time. And the families and students asked for a variety of topics and sort of classes that they could take. So they were interested in exploration. So in the middle school, students could sort of explore different topics that they might not have been exposed to before, whether it's music or drama or tech ed, cooking, fine arts, anything like that, or sorry, visual arts, or tinkering, those kinds of things. They wanted student-centric learning, I guess, is what I'm trying to say is the Ministries, part of the Ministries curriculum. And so I think that choice comes part and parcel with that. So the two, both the what we're hearing from the students and families and what the ministry is telling us are pretty well aligned there. They want, and I think it's important to provide multiple ways of exploring and multiple ways of using the space in order to provide truly student-centric learning. The next theme that came out was collaboration and visibility. So students were interested in describe these spaces where they could do breakout work, where they could have a quiet space to work away from everyone else. So this was one of the tours of the middle school that we went on with the teachers and looking at how there's actually 2 classrooms here and 2 on the other side and a breakout space in the middle. And at the time there was a student just working on some quiet work, but the teacher is able to see them and see what's going on. We saw other breakout spaces in other schools where these are also classrooms that open into the space. So the 2 students are working on group work. And giving them spaces to do this group work is really important in their development. The space in between classrooms is also the important space where the social emotional development takes place, where they make friends and socialize outside of the classroom walls. Students talk to us a lot about comfort. We know that ergonomics and comfort in terms of your body are important for learning outcomes, but what the students were describing without that sort of knowledge of the body of work on education is that they want to move their bodies and they want to collaborate and they want to find comfortable positions. And across the board, students in every grade level repeatedly were asking for natural daylight, and they expressed a desire for views of nature, and they love these kinds of images where you could see a cozy spot to read and nature in the background. We heard from all levels, whether it's parents or teachers or students, that they want connectedness and integration. So they want to make sure that the students feel connected to one another, that no grade level is separated from the other, and that no one feels siloed. They want a large central gathering space where they can be together, and they want smaller nooks on the periphery. So students who are feeling a bit more shy or withdrawn on certain days can still feel like they're part of the space. So that, again, that goes back to choice. So giving everybody choice on any given day and maintaining positive, collaborative staff culture and togetherness and teamwork. We heard a lot about display and Cedar Hill,
Kate, sorry, I'm just going to pause you for a sec. Just got about a couple minutes left and then
okay.
we can wrap. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll shorten them up. I can go very quickly through some, and then there's 1 or 2 that I might need to talk about more. So we did hear the importance of maintaining the stained glass, and we see a tremendous value in that. So we'd like to maintain it and display it, as well as providing some display for students. We heard from students about how much they love to display their work and the pride that they feel. And so we feel that's an important thing to retain in the new school or to provide. This is more on exploration, which I've kind of covered, so I might just skip over that. But one thing I'm just going to add is that they're looking for hands-on cross-disciplinary exploration. Inclusivity is one that I wanted to talk about specifically, which Cedar Hill, this is the Cedar Hill Circle room. So this is one of many inclusive ed spaces in the school. And the spaces are decorated or set up partly by the students. You can see that they have student painting on the door. They also have a lot of student artwork up on the interior. And they lead the staff, the inclusive ed staff, in terms of what kinds of spaces they want and what activities need to happen there. So I think there's a requirement or a need for in the new school to have different size spaces and to make sure that those spaces are student spaces. So we're designing the school for the students, and they in a lot of ways are going to tell us what they need and how those spaces need to be set up for them. I wanted desperately to take photos of the inside, but there were students using the space at the time. So obviously we didn't want to interrupt what was going on in there, but informal learning spaces. So spaces where, which are between or under, this is a space under a stairwell. We have at Salish Secondary. Learning commons. So we heard about how they want to transition from a library to a learning commons model. And I'm not sure if we need to go into that detail just for now, because I'd like to hit the other major points. So nature, outdoor connections, that was something we heard from every single level. We heard it from the teachers, we heard it from the public, and we heard it from the students. So they want to connect into the paths. They want to have views of nature. And we know that, biophilia, there are university studies that also support what we're hearing from everybody else, that having the presence of nature and daylight and those sorts of things will improve learning outcomes. Covered outdoor learning spaces, circulation and pedestrian safety. And we heard that from the public input, from those, the public open house, and from the survey, as well as from teachers and staff. And the most important is, at the heart of it, is the student safety when we're thinking about pedestrian circulation on site, and sustainability. And you'll have noticed that there are 3 different categories: sustainability, nature, and outdoor space. And we heard about those so much that we felt that they could not be collapsed into one, that they were 3 separate categories. And so there was a great amount of interest from all parties, from the students, from the teachers somewhat, but from parents and from the public and neighbors, about making sure that the building is truly sustainable.
Kate, I hate to break in. I'm wondering if we can start to wrap. That would be great.
That's it. Yeah, I'm
Thanks.
there. Thank you. I want to thank everyone for their time, because I know that was a bit long, but I wanted to make sure that that we covered all the major points, so nobody feels that what they expressed to our group didn't get covered. So the last thing is just that in terms of critical decision makings and our timelines, the net zero question, which you guys covered today, is great. That helps us move forward. Acceptance of this visioning document. So the actual document, which is much longer than my presentation, will be shared with everyone. And then decision making on the NLC sort of by the mid or late January will also be critical. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Kate. I'm sure we have to express our appreciation for all the work that you and KMBR have done to date, and there's a lot more to come. So thank you so much for getting us started off on the right foot. If we can turn off screen sharing, just so I can get a full gallery view back, that would be great. Excellent, thank you. Okay, any questions, comments? Trustee Whitaker, go ahead, please.
Thank you. And thank you very much for this presentation and for all the work you're doing in gathering all of this feedback. I just had one question. I know that Cedar Hill is in a location where, I mean, the district of Saanich has so many interconnected trails. So our students are always using the roads. As well as I'm also thinking about teachers, and I'm wondering if there's been any thought towards teachers' transportation to school rather than parking lots, and providing perhaps an indoor parking or bike area for them, or even charging for their electric bikes. I know it's an area we want to move forward with, and I think our teachers are keen to as well do their part. So I'm just wondering if that, providing them a lockup area, might be considered.
Yes, so it is. We will get more into the, like, at this point, we're looking at the visioning, but we have already had discussions about the programming and the bike parking. Bike charging is not one that's come up, so that's a good question that we should have a discussion about at the steering committee level. In terms of inside, there is a requirement from the district for both secure and non-secure bike parking. And we have already actually put in a diagram yesterday, some end of trip facilities. So showering for staff who are biking. Is there more questions or comments on that?
No, thank you. I'm just really glad to hear that it's in the considerations. I would hate to, a couple of years from now, have to go, oh, geez. So thank you very much for that.
Mm-hmm. Everybody's tired.
Chair, you muted.
Thank you very much. I clearly am tired too. So thanks to Kate and Marianne for the presentation tonight and all of your work. Very appreciated. And we can move now to the next section, D, Lansdowne Middle School South Campus. So we'll go to I, Land Disposal Public Consultation Engagement Report, and I will turn the floor over to Secretary Treasurer Kim Morris.
Thank you, Ryan. The report, in the interest of time, the report is there for your information. We have been hearing a lot over the last few days about correspondence, and so I just wanted to make a few comments about that. I think there were a couple of things that were happening. We were in a consultation process where during our, I think on our website and during our public presentation, we asked if you had any feedback to send it to community@sd61.bc.ca. And those results are generally rolled up into our engagement reports. They're not necessarily, if we receive an email or a letter, plucked out for correspondence. So I think that's one thing that was simultaneously happening. So maybe when people were submitting emails, they were thinking that this was going to be correspondence, but it's really going into the engagement report. Another thing that we noticed was happening when we started to take a look at some of the emails that Ryan was forwarding. So individuals were emailing to 9 trustees, but staff wasn't aware of the emails. And so Ryan and I have sort of figured out a process there. We've had a transition in chairs over the consultation period, and both chairs have been great about forwarding things, but it is a transition. I think what's going to happen, and I'm glad that we've postponed to January, because the chair and I will cross-check all our emails with community inbox and the emails trustees have received, and make sure that we have a complete package to go on the January agenda as correspondence. And I would say that I think the board does have some policy work to do and is intent on doing some policy work about defining what is board correspondence, especially when we have so many email addresses going at the same time. So I think that's going to be some important work. But I do know that all trustees did receive, if you sent it to all 9 trustees, I know they received it, and I know they took it into account for tonight, even though we've postponed the decision. But as I said, we will cross-check that over the next week and when we get back. And make sure that it's on January's regular open board meeting. So apologies for anything missed, but I think we had a few different email addresses and processes happening simultaneously that didn't really adhere to each other. So apologies for that, and thank you for your patience.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. And I'll just double down on the commitment to ensure that we do sync up what we've received. And absolutely, trustees have been receiving these emails, and I have been making my best efforts to respond to every email to make sure that folks know we have received them. The disconnect did seem to be in ensuring that those are making their way through to the community engagement box and just syncing all that up. But staff and I will work on that and make sure to get that sorted for next month. Were there any questions or discussions on the engagement report? Seeing and hearing none. And sorry, did you want?
Well, I'm just going to reserve the right to maybe bring this up again at the next meeting. I realize that we're short on time and we're not going through it.
The correspondence piece?
No, the report.
Oh, okay. Well, sure. I mean, we can, if you want to talk now, we can, or you can wait until, I mean, it's on the agenda now. So I would recommend maybe we talk about it now since it's here. Okay. We will move to E 2022-23 budget update. Over to you, Secretary Treasurer Kim Morris.
Okay, so just two quick items. The Talking Tables report is there for information. It's also posted to the website. Thanks to everyone who participated. I think it was a great discussion. And the Budget Advisory Committee met for the second time on December 7th, and the draft minutes are attached for information as well as they are on the website.
Thank you, Kim. Any discussion on those pieces? Talking Tables, Budget Advisory Committee draft minutes. Seeing and hearing none, we'll go to question period. And I believe I just have one question. And it is from an SD61 parent. And I believe this will probably be to Kim and Marnie or Chuck. All bundles, as regarding the Cedar Hill Middle School project, all bundles specify a backup gas boiler. Is this to provide backup for space heating or water heating or both? If it's just for water heating, then suggest using electrical resistance heating instead of gas. If it is for space heating too, then have alternative electricity-based options been explored? Kim, I'll put that over to you.
Turn that over to Chuck and then to Marnie if that's what he'd like to do, but I'll turn that over to our capital staff.
I'll pass it right on to the capital staff. She's dealing with that on an everyday basis.
The gas boiler is actually just for heating of the building, and it will only be used for 3% of the heating load. So the domestic hot water for showers and stuff can be electric, and we have looked into doing an electric boiler for the heating load as well, but then that comes into the demand issue.
Okay, thank you for that, Chuck, Marnie, and Kim. We'll go to public disclosure of in-camera items. G1, record of in-camera board meeting, Board of Education meeting, November 22nd, 2021. And we have G2, which is disclosure of the board's decision on whether or not to implement a vaccine mandate. And that will be added to this agenda. And then we have H, new business notice of motions, and there is none. So I will call for adjournment of the meeting. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Oh, sorry, Nicole.
Chair?
Yeah.
You've alluded to the fact that you're reporting in the vaccine mandate. Are we giving any more information than that?
Yes, my apologies. Sorry, I was looking down at the bottom of the agenda. Yes, so the board has made a decision to not proceed with a vaccine mandate in SD61. That, of course, will be continued to consult and engage with our island health officer, our health officer, but that decision was made, and we are releasing that into the public for public information. Was there anything else on that? And I appreciate trustees keeping watch as I move through this, so I'm staying on top of things. I don't think I've missed anything on that one, but appreciate my colleagues putting me right. if nothing else, then we can go to adjournment. Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Moved by Elaine, seconded by Nicole. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much, everybody. Best of the season to all of you.